The crystal chandeliers of Ristorante Bellissimo cast dancing shadows across tables draped in Italian linen, where the wealthy elite of Manhattan gathered to see and be seen. But in the corner booth, 23-year-old Maya Rodriguez wiped down a table with trembling hands, her third double shift this week, fighting back tears that threatened to ruin the composure she desperately needed to maintain. Her younger brother's medical bills were piling up, her mother's rent was overdue, and the weight of being her family's only hope pressed down on her shoulders like an iron chain. She didn't know that in exactly 7 minutes, her entire life would change, not because of luck or charity, but because of a language her grandmother had taught her in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, and a moral courage she didn't even know she possessed. The moment Alessandro Ferretti strode through the restaurant's mahogany doors, the energy in the room shifted like a sudden drop in barometric pressure before a storm. His $5,000 suit whispered wealth with every movement, his Italian leather shoes clicked against marble floors with the rhythm of entitlement, and his presence commanded the kind of attention that money, not character, had purchased for him. At 47, Alessandro had built a real estate empire that stretched across 3 continents, but somewhere along the way, he had forgotten that the view from the top should inspire humility, not contempt. Maya approached his table with the practiced smile she'd perfected over 4 years of serving people who rarely saw her as human. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Ristorante Bellissimo. May I start you with something to drink?" Alessandro didn't look up from his phone. His fingers danced across the screen, each tap more important than the young woman standing before him. Maya waited, her feet aching in the sensible shoes she'd resold 3 times because new ones weren't in the budget. After a full minute of silence, she tried again. "Sir, whenever you're ready, I can." Water. Sparkling. Not tap. His accent carried the musical notes of northern Italy, but his tone held no music at all. He still hadn't looked at her. Maya nodded and turned to leave, but his voice stopped her cold. "And try not to take all evening about it. Though I suppose that's asking too much from American service staff." He said it in Italian, the words flowing easily. "E cerca di non mettersi tutta la sera. Anche se probabilmente troppo da chiedere al personale di servizio americano." What Alessandro didn't know, what his arrogance prevented him from even considering, was that Maya's grandmother, Nonna Giulia, had emigrated from Tuscany 60 years ago. She had spent every Sunday afternoon teaching Maya the language of her homeland, filling their small apartment with stories of olive groves and ancient villages, ensuring her granddaughter would never forget where they came from. Those afternoons had been Maya's refuge, an escape from bill collectors and endless worry. Maya returned with the sparkling water, setting it down with professional precision. Alessandro glanced up for the first time, his eyes scanning her with the detached assessment of someone evaluating livestock. Then he turned to his companion, a younger man in an equally expensive suit, and continued speaking in Italian, clearly believing he was speaking in code. "Look at this place," Alessandro said, gesturing dismissively. "They charge Michelin prices but hire staff who probably can't even pronounce half the menu items. This waitress looks like she rolled out of bed and stumbled into a uniform." Maya's hand tightened imperceptibly on her order pad. She had been awake since 4:30 that morning, after sitting up all night in the hospital with her brother during one of his episodes. The dark circles under her eyes were carefully covered with drugstore makeup, and yes, her uniform wasn't as crisp as it had been at the start of her shift 12 hours ago. But she was here, she was working, she was fighting. "Sir, are you ready to order?" she asked in English, her voice steady. Alessandro waved her away like she was an insect. "We need more time, obviously." Then, in Italian to his companion, "Why do they always hover? It's like being stalked by a particularly desperate puppy. No class, these people. No understanding of sophisticated dining." His companion laughed, and Alessandro continued, warming to his subject. "My wife wanted to eat at this supposedly authentic Italian restaurant, but there's nothing authentic about it. The staff probably think Olive Garden is fine cuisine. Look at her. She probably doesn't know the difference between prosciutto and pancetta." Maya felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't anger exactly, it was more like a door opening in a room she'd kept locked for too long. She thought about her Nonna, who had died 2 years ago in that same small apartment, surrounded by photographs of the Tuscan hills she would never see again. She thought about how Nonna had worked 3 jobs to put Maya's mother through school, how she'd never complained, never asked for recognition, but had always maintained her dignity. She walked back to Alessandro's table and stood there, waiting until he was forced to acknowledge her presence. "Yes," he said irritably in English. "I told you we need time." Maya smiled, but it wasn't her service smile. This was something different, something true. And then she spoke, her words in flawless Italian, with the exact Tuscan accent her grandmother had passed down like a precious heirloom. "Signore Ferretti, I want to make sure I understand correctly. You find American service staff classless and desperate. You believe we lack sophistication and are incapable of appreciating authentic Italian cuisine. You think I look like I've rolled out of bed. Is that an accurate summary, or did I miss any other observations you'd like to share while I'm standing right here?" The color drained from Alessandro's face like wine from a shattered glass. His companion's mouth fell open in a perfect O of shock. Around them, several nearby diners who understood Italian had stopped their conversations, and the air in the restaurant seemed to crystallize with anticipation. I didn't," Alessandro stammered, switching clumsily to Italian. "I was just," but Maya wasn't finished. Years of swallowing insults, of smiling through contempt, of being invisible to people who had never known a day of real struggle, it all came pouring out in words as precise as a surgeon's blade. "You didn't think I could understand you. That's the problem, isn't it? You looked at me and saw someone beneath your notice. Someone whose struggles, whose education, whose humanity wasn't worth considering. You saw the uniform and decided you knew everything about who I am." She paused, her voice lowering but somehow carrying even more weight. "My grandmother, Giulia Moretti, came from Montepulciano. She taught me Italian while working as a seamstress, a house cleaner, and a cook, sometimes all three in a single day. She taught me that language is a gift, but kindness is a choice. You have both at your disposal, signore, and yet you choose cruelty." Alessandro's face had progressed from pale to crimson. "I apologize. I was out of line." "You were out of line," Maya agreed, her Tuscan Italian rolling out with Nona's distinctive cadence. "But not because I understood you. You were out of line because those words should never have entered your mind in the first place, regardless of whether your target could comprehend them. Disrespect whispered in Italian is still disrespect." She pulled out her order pad with deliberate calm. "Now, regarding your wife's desire for authentic Italian cuisine, might I suggest the carciofi alla romana? Our chef actually trained in Rome, and his grandmother's recipe for artichokes is exceptional. Or perhaps the osso buco. The gremolata is made fresh every morning with organic lemons from a family farm in Calabria. As for the wine, we have a Brunello di Montalcino that pairs beautifully with either dish. It's from a small vineyard outside my grandmother's village, actually. But perhaps you'd prefer I recommend something from Olive Garden." The silence that followed was so complete that Maya could hear the slight tremble in her own breathing. She had just committed career suicide, she realized. In 7 minutes, maybe less, she would be fired. The bills wouldn't get paid. Her brother's medication would run out. Her mother would lose the apartment. But standing there, channeling her grandmother's dignity, Maya discovered something surprising. She felt free. Alessandro stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he closed his menu and set it on the table. "Signorina," he said quietly in Italian, "you are absolutely right. About all of it." He stood up, and for a moment Maya thought he was leaving. Instead, he extended his hand. "Alessandro Ferretti, and I have been a complete and utter fool." Maya hesitated, then shook his hand. "Maya Rodriguez." "Rodriguez," he repeated, Spanish surname, Tuscan accent. "Your grandmother taught you well." "She taught me the language," Maya said. "But more importantly, she taught me that everyone you meet is carrying a burden you know nothing about. She taught me to choose kindness, even when, especially when, it would be easier not to." Alessandro winced. "A lesson I apparently need to relearn." He gestured to his seat. "Please, if you have a moment, sit. I want to know more about Giulia Moretti from Montepulciano who raised a granddaughter with this much courage." "Sir, I can't. I'm working." "Marco," Alessandro called to the restaurant manager, who had been hovering nervously nearby. "Give this young woman a 10-minute break. I'll take full responsibility." Maya sat, her mind reeling. For the next several minutes, Alessandro listened as she spoke about Nona, about her brother's illness, about the double shifts and the fear and the determination to honor her grandmother's legacy through hard work and education. She told him about her online university classes, taken in stolen hours between shifts, working toward a degree in international business. Alessandro didn't interrupt. He didn't offer solutions or make promises. He simply listened with the kind of attention that, Maya realized, might have been the first truly respectful thing he'd done for someone outside his social sphere in years. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My father was a mason. Did you know that? In Verona, he had hands like tree bark from working with stone his entire life. He died when I was 25, just as my first development deal was closing. I never got to show him that his son had made it." Alessandro's voice cracked slightly. "Somewhere along the way, I forgot that having money doesn't mean I earned the right to look down on people who work just as hard as he did. Harder, maybe." He pulled out a business card and wrote on the back of it, "This is my personal number. I have a position opening in my company's international acquisitions department. We need someone who speaks multiple languages and understands both American and European business cultures. The work is challenging, the hours are real, and I won't pretend it's charity. You'd have to prove yourself every single day." Maya stared at the card, her hands shaking. "Sir, I don't understand. I'm not offering you a job because I feel guilty," Alessandro interrupted. "Though I do, immensely. I'm offering because someone who can stand up to a billionaire's insults with that much grace and intelligence while working a double shift is exactly the kind of person I need on my team. Someone who won't be intimidated by difficult clients or challenging negotiations. Someone with real courage." He stood, placing several $100 bills on the table. "For the meal we're not staying to eat, and for your time. But Maya, the job offer stands regardless of whether you feel I've earned your respect tonight. Think about it. Call me when you're ready." 3 months later, Maya sat in a glass-walled conference room on the 32nd floor of Ferretti International, leading a presentation to investors in 3 languages. Her brother's treatment was fully covered by her new health insurance. Her mother had moved into a safer apartment. And on her desk sat a framed photograph of Nona Julia, whose greatest legacy had turned out to be not just the gift of language, but the courage to use it for truth. Alessandro often told the story of that night, how a waitress in a Manhattan restaurant had taught him more about real success than any business school ever could. He told it to his children, to new employees, to anyone who would listen. But he never told it as a story about his generosity. He told it as a story about the day he had been seen clearly by someone he'd tried to render invisible, and how that moment of accountability had changed everything. Because true transformation, he learned, doesn't come from the powerful deciding to be kind. It comes from the powerless refusing to be diminished, and the powerful being brave enough to listen when they're called out. Sometimes the most important words ever spoken aren't declarations of love or war. Sometimes they're a young woman's quiet insistence, in flawless Tuscan Italian, that everyone deserves to be seen as human, even when they've forgotten how to be humane themselves.